Hey everybody, welcome to our fourth meeting of the semester. Um, if you haven't signed in yet, go ahead and scan the QR code. Make sure you use your NC State email for all the attendance stuff. And if you have any questions or anything like that throughout the meeting, just go ahead and type it in the chat. Um, can you hit the next slide?
All right, so I have some more service opportunities if you didn't have enough from last time. So Zero is an organization that provides support and guidance for cancer patients, specifically ones with prostate cancer. And they have this mentor program that you can volunteer virtually. Career Village is an opportunity to help students find their perfect job by giving them any career advice. Tarjimly is a app that you can use to help refugees by offering translation services. Inner Shoes is an organization that helps with advocating for young girls and women. And Letters Against Depression is writing letters for those who need support, especially those who are struggling with mental illnesses. And Enchanted Makeovers is where they have a lot of DIY community projects that benefit women and children in shelters.
All right, Jessica, thank you for that. So now we're going to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker, Ms. Sheila Graham McDonald. She is the Assistant Director of Financial Aid for the UNC School of Medicine, and she's going to discuss with us today about how to finance a medical school education. So welcome, Ms. Graham.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invite. And hopefully I can share with you some information and some knowledge about financing your medical education. I'm going to try and share my screen, so give me a minute. If you do have any questions, Ryan, if you will, just help me monitor those in the chat because I can't see them when I'm sharing my screen. So I do want this to be very interactive. And so just let me know or stop me at any time if you have any questions at all.
All right, yes, ma'am. I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen so you can go ahead and take over.
Okay. Okay, so again, I'm Sheila from UNC, and I always encourage students who are looking at medical school, if they have any questions at all, please use me as a resource as you prepare, for your medical education. Some things that we're going to talk about today: applying to medical school, paying for medical school, completing the free application for federal student aid, Stafford loans, and service awards. And all of these are related to money. And so as we move along, most of these are going to be geared towards, how do you pay for these things? So the first thing is, before you get into medical school, there is a fee. There are lots of fees that you will pay even before you look at what the total cost of education is at any school that you may apply to. And what I've listed here are some fees that you may be aware of, that you may not be aware of, that you're going to have to account for before you even apply to medical school. And the very first one is, I should have listed that first, is the MCAT. So you must take the MCAT first. I've listed that cost there. There may be other expenses that you may incur, like late registration fees. You may want to change your registration. And so all of that adds up. And as you can see, as you apply, the primary applications is $170 right out the bat. And if you want to apply for other schools, it's $41 for each additional school that you may be interested in applying for. Secondary applications, those are fees that you pay to the school. Ours at UNC is currently $68. There may be a fee assistance program that you may be eligible for to have that fee waived. But if you are interested in finding out more about that, I can definitely give you information about that. And then you have college service fees. And what is that? That is transcript fees. If someone has to write a letter of recommendation for you, all of those add up. So the next thing I want you to do as you get ready and prepare to pay for medical school is to prepare early. And that definitely sounds like what you all are doing as you're getting ready, you know, in your undergraduate career to think about the next steps in medical school. So some things to think about. What schools are you interested in applying to? Will you be considered in-state or out-of-state for tuition purposes? And does those schools that you may be applying for, if you are considered out-of-state, does their residency change, you know, after you're enrolled? Some of our out-of-state students at UNC School of Medicine, if they have lived in the state of North Carolina for 1 year after they've been enrolled in medical school, they can apply for in-state residency. So you definitely want to make sure you understand how that works if you're planning to apply for schools out of the state where you are considered a legal resident. It may not be North Carolina, it may be another state. And then I would suggest that you create a comparison sheet. And I just kind of did a really quick snapshot of kind of what that may look like for you. You can definitely add more items there, but you want to find out what the total cost of education is. What are the tuition and fees? What's the room and board? What's considered other expenses? And other expenses may be immunizations, you may need instruments, all of that make up the other expenses. So I just listed the two here. ECU is one that I found online, and their total cost of education, as you may know, is much lower than ours, simply as you can see what the difference in the total cost of education is. And what you want to do is start building upon that with the different schools that you may be applying for, doing your research early, finding out what that cost is and how much you actually want to pay for medical school. Is it expensive? Yes. But hopefully today we can come up with some ways to minimize some of those expenses that may be out of pocket for you. The next thing that you want to do, and you probably, you know, if you're in school, have heard of the free application for federal student aid, is called the FAFSA. And you must complete the FAFSA each year that you are in medical school. Some schools require parental data, so you want to reach out to those schools or visit their websites to see what other information that you may need to complete other than the FAFSA information. Most schools use the parental data. You're probably wondering, okay, I'm grown, I don't need my parents in this. What am I needing to ask my parents for parental data for? The reason why some schools do have institutional scholarships, they have institutional funding where they do want to go a step further and looking at that FAFSA information. So that's the reason for the parental data. Otherwise, you are considered independent at the graduate and professional level. So that means you don't necessarily have to complete the parental side of the FAFSA as a graduate and professional student. The FAFSA is completely different from the admissions application. So although you are applying for admission to various schools, you definitely want to continue to apply for financial aid, regardless of whether you've been accepted or not. And so that means as you are working with the admissions office, you are also working with the financial aid office and making sure everything is current with your financial aid data along with your admissions data. And believe it or not, the 2020, I'm sorry, I went backwards. That should be 2021, 2022 cycle actually opens tomorrow for the 21-22 cycle. And the information that's reported on the FAFSA is 2 tax years behind this current year. So in 21-22, you'll be reporting 2020 data. I'm sorry, 2019 data. And so just make sure as you complete that FAFSA that you probably won't hear anything from the schools in the next few weeks. It's probably going to be after the first of the year if you're applying for the upcoming cycle. The next thing that you will receive after you've completed the financial aid information is a financial aid award letter. And that explains to you what makes up your total cost of education and what resources reflect what that total cost is. So you want to review that, and each school is a little differently, and make sure that you understand what those next steps are in applying for the financial aid. Now, most of the packets that we award from the School of Medicine are from the Stafford Loan Program. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about Stafford loans and what that means for you. The Stafford Loan Program has basically two loans that you can potentially borrow from. One is the unsubsidized loan, and the other one is called a Direct Graduate Plus loan. You may hear it referred to as a Grad Plus loan. This year, because of COVID-19, the interest rates are really low at the graduate level, which has not been this low as I've seen it in the last probably 4 or 5 years. But the maximum you can borrow in an unsubsidized loan in an academic year is $40,500. And usually, if you don't have any other aid to make up your total cost of education, it is you will see that difference with a Graduate Plus loan. Grad Plus loans are credit-based, and so if you haven't had an opportunity to look at your credit in a while, you do get a free credit report every 12 months from annualcreditreport.com, and we'll talk about that a little later. But I do want you to know that the Stafford Loan Program is probably what will make up the majority of your cost of education. And a lot of students say, okay, well, I'm looking for scholarships. I'm looking for scholarships to pay for my medical education. They're far few in between, but there are some scholarships out there that may be community-based. They may be monies that you can get from your parents, church organizations, if you're members of fraternity or sororities, those types of funds that you can definitely look for. But as far as looking for monies, at the grad professional level, you will find that there will be minimal. The origination fees, I also like to point that out because the federal government actually charges you to process that loan. So if you have loans currently, if you're receiving financial aid now as an undergraduate student, then the origination fee comes right off the top before the money is sent to the school. So just be aware of that as you prepare as to what that cost is going to look like when you get ready for medical school. The other thing that I also want to mention that trip students up every year that I talk about is, okay, well, if we go back let's go back and use this as a comparison. So the total cost of education at UNC is almost $72,000, $51,000 at ECU. And so I talk to students to say, okay, well, I received a $20,000 scholarship, let's say from UNC. And I really do want to go to ECU. What are your thoughts on what my process or what my thought process should be in determining whether I go if it's based on your finances? My thing is, if you're borrowing the same amount of loans, does it really matter? Go to the school of your choice. If you're going to still borrow $40,500 in loans and the scholarship is only $20,000, then you want to go where you really want to go, not necessarily because of the money, because your debt is going to be the same. So just keep that in mind. I talk to students all the time. $20,000 does sound like a lot of money, but most of the time those scholarships, they help, but you still end up borrowing the same amount if you had gone to a school where the cost of education was not as much. So do talk that out, with financial aid officers to help you determining and making those types of decisions if you're trying to save some money. Finding your loans, just a quick update on where to find your loans. I know it can be a little confusing. Studentaid.gov is where you're going to find all of your loans, regardless of where you attended school. And once you do that, you want to set up an account with your servicer because that's how you're going to manage those loans while you are in repayment after graduation. The biggest thing I think are the service awards. And what that means is these types of awards will decrease the amount of debt that you will be in based on a service given back to, for example, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And that is a really, really hot topic. Public Service Loan Forgiveness was created back in 2007. And it's a 10-year, basically 120 payments in an enrolled qualifying repayment program. And you have to be employed by 501c3 organization. And what is that? Those are your public institutions and your public hospitals. And what does that mean for you? If you've borrowed a significant amount of money and you've done and have qualified for all three of those, then after 10 years, the portion of the loan that has not been repaid is then forgiven. And you've probably heard or read that, I've heard that many students don't get this. It's less than 10%. What I have found is that most students, or I shouldn't say students, graduates that didn't qualify, one of the main reasons is that they were in one of the incorrect repayment options. So you do have to be in one of the qualifying repayment options identified by the federal government. The National Health Service Corps is also a great program. If you're thinking about primary care, they do send you out to, areas where there's a shortage of health professions. They can pay up to $120,000 of loans that you already have received, so that's a repayment process. They also have a scholarship program. And here's where I caution students, because the scholarship is something that you can receive at the beginning of your medical school career. And sometimes, or most all times, some students come in and they say, I know I want to do this. I know I want to be a pediatrician. I know I want to be in internal medicine. However, when they get to doing those clinical rotations, their minds change. And so if you decide to do something other than National Health Service Corps, it is a huge penalty to repay those funds back. So I encourage students to always do it on the back end. Not saying you can't do it, as a scholarship, but I do encourage doing it on the back end, because when you get to the 4th year, you know exactly what you want to do. So keep that in mind. The Indian Health Service Corps is basically community oriented, where you can have monies forgiven or repaid in that program also. If you are part of the military or the armed services, they have a great program, and most people shy away from the military because they were saying, I don't want to do the military, I don't want to do this. But it's really not a bad program to be in. You do have choice, as to where you go and what you do, where they pay a huge amount of your tuition and fees, and they also award you a stipend. And so that is another way to reduce your debt also. There was one student that I talked with shortly after graduation who was having nightmares about all the debt he was in. And a few years ago, he contacted me and he said, Miss Sheila, he said, I am debt free. And I was like, well, how did you do that? And he said, well, I joined the military and I absolutely love it. And they were able to, and he was able to have all of his loans repaid by joining the military after he had graduated, after he had practiced medicine for a few years. So definitely, if you hear anything about the military, check it out. It's not for everybody, but it may be something that you might want to look into, a little more closely. There are also state and federal loan forgiveness programs. And what does that mean is that, let's say, for example, here in the state of North Carolina, we do have a program just for North Carolina residents that we award it's a $14,000 loan, but for each $14,000 loan that you get, then you are given 1 year of service back to the state of North Carolina. And yes, you can do that, come back and do that after you finish your residency. You don't have to do that while you're in your residency program. So definitely check out, most people start looking at this after, they've matched where they're going to be living. Check out the state and federal loan forgiveness programs. And also the there are schools that have different repayment options to also help you to reduce debt. I will say that here at UNC, we have several programs where we give students monies for reduction of their loan debt if they're thinking about staying here in North Carolina, practicing in primary care. We have some that we award to students who are in their residency program with an anticipation of coming back to the state of North Carolina, and we give them monies to also help to reduce that debt. So there are lots of ways, that you can do medical school, by reducing your debt. You just have to be methodical about it and plan ahead. And what I do want to share with you is the AAMC's resource. And I don't know if any of you have been there or not, but there is a wealth of information there that you can find about medical school, from how to apply, if I'm a non-traditional student, then what's available for me as a non-traditional student. There are videos there are webinars there. So definitely take a look at the AAMC's website. It's called the FIRST Program for Financial Information, Resources, Services, and Tools. That's what the FIRST Program stands for. So I want you to use that as a tool to help you to make decisions about your medical school career as you venture out and start looking at schools you may want to apply for. So that's all I have. Are there any questions, or you want me to talk about something that I have not covered? Or so let's open it up for questions that you may have. And I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, that would be great also.
Hey, Ms. Graham. I actually had a question.
Okay.
So you were talking about the loan forgiveness programs and stuff, and how people would take out loans in the beginning, but then change their minds about where they want to go into, like, in rotation. So, like, is it possible to do the loan forgiveness programs like after you do rotations? So like for like maybe your third or fourth year or whatever?
Yeah, so the way the loan forgiveness program works, it doesn't start until after you've graduated. And so with the loan, like say, for example, the public service loan forgiveness program, that doesn't start until you're in repayment of your loans, and that's after you've graduated. And so at that point, you're going to know where you're going to work. You know whether that's going to be a public institution or not. And so those are decisions you make after graduation. Now with National Health Service Corps, you're definitely going to do that. If you're going to do the repayment part of it, you're going to do that after you've graduated also. So basically, you're going to be borrowing Stafford loans while you are in school, but the National Health Service Corps will repay those loans once you have been accepted into the National Health Service Corps program. It's only with the scholarship of the National Health Service Corps program that you kind of have to maneuver your curriculum based on that program. And I don't feel as if you should do that, because you may get in medical school and you may get to clinical rotations, and it might be something that you said you want to do all your life, and another clinical rotation may change your mind. And
Yeah.
so but don't get me wrong, students do it because they know for sure that they want to do something in the primary care field. But just be cautious as you move that way.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Hi, yeah, actually I do have a question. So if you're an out-of-state undergraduate, and if you lived in North Carolina for 2 years before you're applying for medical school, would you be considered an in-state student for medical school then?
So you are currently out of state and you've been in the state of North Carolina in school for 2 years?
Yeah, so like if you live in an apartment then?
So have you made North Carolina your primary residency while you've been in undergraduate?
So I haven't started this yet. I'm just
Oh,
planning
okay,
in
I'm sorry.
advance. No, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah. So that would be what you need to do then? Make it your
So you
primary?
have, right, North Carolina would have to be your primary resident in order for you to apply for in-state residency.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. And our admissions officer is a guru at residency questions. So what I'll do, I'll send Ryan her information. So if you do have residency questions, please reach out to her. She would be more than happy to help you and to guide you when it comes to applying for and making sure you've done everything as far as residency status goes.
Thank you.
I did mention this, but I do always talk about budgeting. And I think you all probably hear it all the time, you know, manage your money. Where's your money? Where is your money going? You're going to need that, you know, as you prepare for, you know, to apply for residency. No, I'm sorry, apply for medical school, because if you're strictly on financial aid, then you want to know where those resources are going to come from to help pay for those additional applications that you may be submitting while you're still a student. So be mindful, you know, of your budgeting habits and kind of where those funds are going.
I had a question.
Sure.
You were talking about you were comparing ECU and UNC, and you used the example of the $20,000 UNC scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, like, scholarships at UNC, like, for medical school, I thought that was pretty rare. Or was that just an example?
It was just an example, trust me. We do offer scholarships at the admissions level, and they range anywhere from 5,000, and we have very few that are at 20,000. But we do have a small portion of scholarships that we do offer. But that was just an example that I wanted to use to show that even though you may have a scholarship, the loan piece of your financial aid award may be the same.
Okay. And sorry, I had two more quick questions.
Sure.
I could probably really easily look this up on the AAMC website, but is there a fee assistance program at all for the MCAT? Do you know?
I think there is, but let me check with our director of admissions. She would know the answer to that. And like I said, I can funnel my questions back to Ryan.
I can actually talk about that some.
Okay, awesome.
Because I registered recently. So for the MCAT, if you qualify for the fee assistance program, they reduce. I think the price was like $320.
Mm-hmm.
So if you qualify, they reduce it to $120.
Okay. All right.
So it's still a fee, sounds like, but it's a less.
Yeah, it's a fee, but like
Yeah.
that's $200. You know.
Right. Exactly. Definitely.
And then I had one more question about like health insurance, and there's probably someone I could specifically talk to about health insurance.
Uh-huh.
But do you guys offer like a student health insurance plan? Like at State, we have like Student Blue with Blue Cross. So do you have something like that?
Yes. So all the campuses in the state of the UNC campuses, I should say, they are required to provide health insurance for you. So at grad professional level, you will be required to pay the university's health insurance or have your own. So yeah, that will continue. So you are required to have health insurance while you're enrolled as a grad professional student.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Other questions? I know you all are full of questions today. Come on. Don't be shy.
Hi, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I was wondering if just medical schools in general look at other stuff like your grades and like as an undergrad and like stuff that you do outside of school, just like the normal college admissions process.
Yeah, I will. I'm not an admissions guru, but I will say, being next door in the same suite as the admissions team, I will say that they do look at applications holistically, which means they do look at your grades, they look at any work experience, they look at any volunteer work that you've done. So they look at your MCAT score, so they don't just look at one doesn't outweigh the other. So they want to see that you are providing you as a whole person as to kind of what you do with your grades. Are you able to do anything else other than study? And so those are the things that they look at, in our office when it comes to admission.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have reworded that better. I meant, like, does that have a factor in your financial aid package?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it does not. They are completely separate. Yeah, no, the admission, when the admissions office is looking at applications, the financial aid office, which is the office that I work in, they are completing a packet for you. Now, as far as the scholarship goes, the admissions team may look at that application to determine if you are eligible for a scholarship based on your admissions application. But again, it's not necessarily your grades. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome.
In the chat, Sammy asked, is the application for UNC scholarships separate, or is the medical school application used for scholarships as well?
So at UNC, we do have a scholarship application that's sent to students after they have been accepted. And so it is separate from the admissions application. So you may want to check with other schools. You may be, you may be interested in applying to see what their process is also. Are there other questions that I can answer? I know, this is, a daunting little task when it comes to, thinking about what the medical school will cost. But if you start early, you should be able to understand kind of, if you do have to borrow loans, what that amount is going to look like. With the loans available to you, and hopefully scholarships, and sometimes you do have to think beyond medical school. What's going to happen after I graduate? How am I, if I end up with $200,000 in debt, then what's my plan to repay this? And I always tell students, you treat it as a bill. You got to pay your light bill, you got to pay your student loan bill. And so, $200,000, yes, it's a scary number, but if it's something that, you really want to do, then you bite the bullet and you pay for that and you figure out how you're going to repay that once you've graduated. Now, I also recommend students who have that large amount of debt to also invest in a financial planner. Financial planning can help you to look at the big picture, to look at your total, your income, your loan debt, your bills. So financial planners can look at that, because you just don't want to be looking at, okay, I know I have, a $250 or a $3,000 loan payment every month, but I still got to pay my rent. And so financial planners help you look at the big picture. But that is something down the road, after you have finished medical school, you're in repayment of your loans. And you look at your income, and you all are fortunate that, once you finish your residency, your income changes significantly. And what do you do within those few years while you're in your residency program, and paying off your loans and paying your monthly bills and still having monies left over? So I do recommend financial planners at some point after you have finished your medical school career and while you're in your residency program.
All right, so we do have one question in the chat, and it says, can you explain a little more what the secondary application fee is and how is it different from the primary one?
So the primary is what you're paying to the AAMC to process your application. The secondary is what you're sending to the schools to then take another look at your application after it has been received. So the way it works at UNC is that the admissions team looks at the entire applications, and then they deem students that they may want to interview. Those students that they may want to interview then pay a supplementary or a secondary application fee to the university, whereas the primary goes to the AAMC. So that's why you need to, again, start looking at schools you know you're interested in, and then put those that are kind of, iffy on the bottom and start comparing, because you can end up spending a lot of money in this process if you have various amounts of schools on your list that you say, okay, well, maybe I'll go here, maybe I'll apply here, but get serious about it. Know what you want, look at those programs, and then start making your list of what that cost would look like at the beginning of that application process, so you know how much money you need to apply to those schools.
Yeah, one thing I will add is that the medical school admissions requirements, the MSAR from the AAMC, which I know that we've talked about at least one of our past meetings, that is a tool that allows you to see just basically all the information you could want about medical schools, but it does have a lot of information about the financial side. It does include the secondary application fee, if there is one, as well as like tuition fees for in-state, out-of-state, all that stuff. So I definitely recommend checking that out when you're doing your research.
And talk to financial aid officers. You can't go wrong by, contacting or emailing the schools that you may be interested in, and just finding out a little bit more about what they do, what their process is when it comes to, applying for financial aid. So use us as a resource. That's what we're here for. And I definitely like to see students who come in and are prepared and know exactly what they're getting into, as opposed to a student who comes in and has no idea that the cost of education is $70,000, and of that 30 is tuition and fees. So now's the time that I would want to talk with you to kind of figure out kind of where you are, kind of what your plan is. What is it that you learned about financial aid where you were, undergrad, and now you're, coming to medical school? What's different? And so definitely reach out to the financial aid officers. Again, I am a resource. I will, I have my email in the slide. I can send it to Ryan. So reach out. That's all I can say, and to let you know that I'm available. And I always tell students, regardless of whether you go, whether you end up at UNC School of Medicine or you end up at another school, it's all the same. And my goal is to help you do that successfully.
All right, do we have any questions? Anything else? All right, so I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Ms. Graham, thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Yeah, like we talk about like getting into medical school and stuff a lot, like in this club, but handling the finances of it, like that's a big part of people's decisions and the whole process. So thank you so much for coming and elaborating on it for us.
You are welcome. You are welcome. And thank you for the invite. You have my information, so just let me know if there's anything I can do to each and every one of you. I am a resource. So start with me, and then I can spread your wings a little bit. Thank you all so much for the invite, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, you too.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, thank you all for coming. Our next meeting will be October 14th at 3 p.m. We're expecting to have Duke admissions join us, and we will send out all those details on our email. So check out our Instagram. We're going to upload this on YouTube if you want to rewatch it, and make sure you hit that attendance code. All right, have a good afternoon.